Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying just because you have alternative truths and misinformation and speculation, it doesn't mean that it is actually correct, Mr. Speaker. Before I get into that, let me deal with another matter that was raised on the floor of this honorable chamber earlier today, and that's the questions that were put to the Honorable Minister of Education, my colleague, the hard, good-working minister, in regards to comments that I made a couple of weeks ago when I was interviewed by a local media about T.N. Tatum. And Mr. Speaker, this is another one of those incidents where the opposition spin, smoke and mirrors, and provide ample qualities of misinformation, Mr. Speaker. I was clearly asked at the local media station when I went up there one night. At the end of an interview, I was asked about what took place recently at T.N. Tatum. And my comments were specific in regards to the fact, Mr. Speaker, I think if you reflect back, early in the week, I think it was Monday, the teachers decided that they didn't want to work in the facility because they were worried about the conditions in the facility, and that's all fine. The Minister of Education had been working closely with the department for some time to ensure that the condition of the building and the working conditions were appropriate. My comments simply revolved around the fact that on Friday, if individuals were concerned about the conditions, any conditions in the facility, they could have made the decision then that it would be inappropriate to work at that time, rather, Mr. Speaker, than letting everyone involved in education, especially our children, come to school that day and have to inconvenience parents by making other plans for them during the day. So, Mr. Speaker, it shows clearly that the opposition will try to spin things and distort the truth. And I just wanted to set the record straight once again on that those comments were not dealing with the educational process at the school, the quality of education, the teachers, the children. They were dealing with the fact that is, if you're not happy about the conditions of the place and been talking about it for some time, let's give some notice so we will not inconvenience the children that we all dearly love and their education process. Let's make sure that we can make arrangements to remove them from that environment in an appropriate way. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me deal with the business of the day that the opposition has spun a quite interesting yarn throughout this afternoon. And let me start out by saying, Mr. Speaker, that this government has worked assiduously to protect the reputation of Bermuda. From day one, we have worked night and day to protect our reputation, whether it's to the east or the west or anywhere else. We have been there to make sure we promote Bermuda, deal with challenges that come up, and answer questions. All colleagues on the front bench and the back bench have done what is required to do that, and I believe because of that, Bermuda has managed to weather some choppy waters, Mr. Speaker. So I find it quite alarming that the opposition would come here this afternoon and try to spread misinformation and speculation. And if you listen very carefully to what was said, they couched it not in so much an affirmative position, but perhaps this will take place. If this takes place, Mr. Speaker, I think by the actions of the opposition today, they have hurt Bermuda, as they call into question what has been done without any facts to it, Mr. Speaker. Now, quite clearly, this government continues to have a strong relationship with our closest and our best trading partner, the United States of America. And yes, Mr. Speaker, Cabinet has been aware of this matter for some time. Mr. Speaker, in addition, we have continued to talk with our partners, and as recently as this morning, I talked to the acting U.S. Consul General to make sure that everything was in order as far as our relationship with the United States of America. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand very concerned that the opposition would try to distort things. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, if you reflect back on the 4 years of the opposition being on the other side, it's been one issue after the other that they brought up as the spin of the day, or the week, or the month. and gradually it's been dealt with. I refer back, I'll just take a couple examples, Mr. Speaker. I refer back to the Bermuda Tourism Authority. When the Tourism Authority was created, there was misinformation galore out there. One honorable member from that side said the chairman was getting paid $400, $600. No, it could be $1 million. We don't know. And the honorable member said that's right, but he was wrong. We corrected him over and over again. He was wrong, but they spread misinformation, and the honorable members on that side, they had to believe that it would undermine the work of the BTA. They had to believe that. But that just goes to show they're going to put themselves in front of the progress of Bermuda. But what happened, Mr. Speaker? The BTA stood strong. Stood strong. And the honorable opposition leader laughs. He laughs. He said, yes, he is laughing. And now we see the results. They didn't get dismayed, even though they were upset by many of the comments that emanate from politicians. They were critically talked about over and over again, but they stuck to the wicket. And the runs have come, Mr. Speaker. And then they shift on to other issues. They shift on to the airport, spread the misinformation. I hear the honorable opposition leader talk about now it's over $2 billion that's going to be given away, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Not a point of order.
If I may, the honorable premier is misleading what I said. I said precisely $2.4 billion in revenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, that's another example of Burt math, Mr. Speaker. We dealt with that in the debate last week, and Burt math continues. It's not a material qualification in any way, Mr. Speaker, but much more misinformation, so we deal with that. But, Mr. Speaker, I find it interesting when we talk today and the opposition want to talk about it in international matter. And yet, when the Uyghurs came to Bermuda, under the cloak of darkness.
Gentlemen, I need to remind the members who sit in the audience. I said, when you sit in the audience, you just sit there, you make no gestures or whatever, if you care to remain in the audience. Carry on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So they came in under the cloak of darkness, and the cabinet at that time, I believe the former deputy premier said that the honorable member wasn't even aware of it. So I assume none of cabinet was aware. So now all of a sudden they want to question whether this cabinet knows what's going on. Of course we do, Mr. Speaker. And then they want to say, well, you know, it's not about the Uyghurs because they're people just like us. But, Mr. Speaker, they're chained to the rock. They can't go anywhere. And the numbers are growing. So what are we going to do with them? It's a burden we put on people because we violated relationships that we had, Mr. Speaker. We did. They've gone silent on that. They've gone silent on that. The UK government didn't know about it. United Kingdom government didn't know about it. The governor at that time was incensed. He didn't know about it. So, Mr. Speaker, now all of a sudden they're trying to mold a pot. They're trying to mold a pot that can't even get out of the oven. It's cracked. It's flawed. It's mendacity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they talk about debt with what we've done here. Maybe it's going to have an impact of our debt. Mr. Speaker, I almost fell out of my chair in the back when I heard that one. For a opposition who never talked about debt when they were the government to now bring debt into the question, when this man who sits to my left, this honorable members, worked so hard to put our books back in order, Mr. Speaker. Come on, that's a shallow argument. You know, with all the time they had to prepare for the House today, they could have come up with a better one than that. Mr. Speaker, and they talk about this like we're going to ruin our international reputation. But what about the payment, Mr. Speaker, of $4 million to a police officer because he had to work in conditions that they were under their authority that time because of mold, Mr. Speaker? Gone quiet. We hear nothing. $4 million, Mr. Speaker, was paid out. And because of the good work by people in that case, that amount was pushed back. Mr. Speaker, how convenient to forget. How convenient to forget. But it's important to remember, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague talked about the former Auditor General who was pushed around like a puppy in a box, told what to do. Mr. Speaker, so I'm quite concerned to hear the language coming from the other side, Mr. Speaker. And one thing that I wish to clear up, Mr. Speaker, honorable member from constituency number 5 made reference to myself visiting a place of corrections here in Bermuda and had a conversation with an inmate at that time and alluded to me asking that inmate to implicate members which he listed. Mr. Speaker, that is a bold-faced untruth. And I will get the answer, and I will ask for an apology on the floor of this House next week. It never happened. But that, Mr. Speaker, is the epitome of the level they will stoop to try to gain a political advantage and put the people in Bermuda at jeopardy because of that type of comment. Come on, Mr. Speaker. We are better than that. Research your facts, because any credibility you will have is gone. Gone, Mr. Speaker. There's another member over there every week who wants to talk about the weakness of the Premier and the lack of trust in the Premier. Mr. Speaker, it goes in one side, I listen to it, and I spit it out the other side. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because do I expect anyone on that side to give credit to us for something we're doing? Never at all. But I asked that honorable member, what type of leadership is he providing? He mentioned cricket. Just reflect back on the leadership he provided in cricket, Mr. Speaker. What comes around, goes round, Mr. Speaker. And I'm aggravated by this debate here today. Because and the honorable opposition leader says it's a sad day, it is. Because of the prevarication that emanates from that side of the room like a fan on full speed, Mr. Speaker. It's ridiculous. And the truth hurts. That's why there's murmuring on that side, Mr. Speaker. The truth hurts, but the people of Bermuda can be assured that this government will not wither or wane by prevarication or misinformation from the opposition, because we know that's all it is, Mr. Speaker. We will stand and protect Bermudians and our reputation at every step. And we have to be guarded on what we say about this action, because the opposition, they want us to pervert the course of any action in public. That's what the goal is. They dance all around the bush about this stuff. And yes, Mr. Speaker, let it be clear. This government cares about patient rights, patient confidentiality, and patient treatment. Mr. Speaker, I have family members who use Leahy Clinic. So don't give me any claptrap about we want to put in jeopardy anybody's health. No, Mr. Speaker, don't even try that on. That is shallow and that is low. And those honorable members over there are big enough, smart enough to come with a better argument than that. So when we come back next week, have a better argument, Mr. Speaker. That's low. That appeals to people who are down and out, and it's wrong. People who are getting treatment at that institution now will get the same quality treatment they expected last week. This is a matter that has to be dealt with in the courts, not in an operating room or a doctor's office, Mr. Speaker. They're professionals. They will do their job. Now, Mr. Speaker, I've spoken with some passion on this issue tonight because of the hollow rhetoric I've heard come from that side. We will continue to move forward and take care of the interests of all of the people of Bermuda, in spite of members on that side who want to try to distort and weave in mistruths and misinformation. We're strong enough to make through it, Mr. Speaker, and we will answer all the questions as required at the appropriate time. I have confidence in my colleagues as we move forward, but Mr. Speaker, as we've said in this honorable chamber and other places many times before, we had a big job to do. No decisions are easy, and everything we do is going to be looked at a very critical light. But we've got broad shoulders. Yes, from time to time, we do some things that could have been done in a better way. But we wake up the next day and we strive to move the people of Bermuda forward, and we care as deeply about everyone in Bermuda as the opposition say they do, Mr. Speaker. And I challenge anybody to distort or disprove that. So, Mr. Speaker, we will protect. The honorable members want a catcall over there. That's cheap stuff. That's cheap stuff. Mr. Speaker, if the shoe fits, they're going to wear it. But here we are today. This government will protect our reputation, and we will protect Bermudians as we move forward. And let's deal with facts, not alternative truths or nonsense, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I wish you and colleagues a safe weekend. I look forward to being back here next week.